So I'm speaking with composer Marcelo Zarvos, who has done some amazing work with scores like Hollywoodland, The Good Shepherd, Sin Nombre, and The Door on the Floor being some of my absolute favorites. You can hear his recent score to The Words, which is out now, and coming up he's reteaming with Barry Levinson for The Bay. Thanks so much for talking with me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
I know you have a very rich history in all kinds of music, but what specifically made you want to compose for film and television?
Well, I fell in love with music through film and television. Well, I would say mostly film music, and that's what, as a kid, random thing, not necessarily what you would think, but the film that marked me the most, strangely, because it's not even really mostly not an original score, but it was this thing, which had all the Scott Joplin music that Marvin Hamlish did that marvelous job at, adapting. But from there on, there were a lot of movies in the 70s when I was a kid growing up that really marked me like everybody else. I was terrified about Jaws and I don't know. There were these various the stuff that really I wanted to play. The music was, I was a bit to kind of backtrack a little bit. I started music by playing piano. And everything that I wanted to do was play movie music, on the piano. So that's kind of what got me as a child. But this was just a fantasy, as a kid. And it was not that very far from, at that point, I was 10 years old, it was not very far from, somebody wanting to be a policeman or an astronaut, But it did stick to me, like all of those early memories, it really did stick to me. And I kept always just, I always paid a lot of attention to music in films. A little bit later on, I remember being very, very blown away by the scores of Blade Runner. That's already getting to the 80s. And then little by little, I don't know, it was just something that was always interesting to me. But so I decided that I was going to come to the U.S. to study film scoring at Berkeley College in Boston, which I did when I was 18 years old. But when I got there, I decided that it was too soon to really focus on that. So basically, I had this very strong interest in film scoring, and I kept myself sort of from doing it until I was about 28 or something like that, which is when with 10 years after I got to the United States with the idea of scoring movies, 10 years after that, I actually scored a movie. And in the meantime, what I did was that I did study composition and piano, classical piano and jazz, and played all sorts of music, did albums, recording my stuff, and was exposed to a lot of music. In the end of the day, I think in retrospect, I think that was the best training for film scoring that I could have done. What I thought at the time was that it was too specific to be getting so specialized, and plus I feel like in a college, like at Berkeley, I think what they mostly were doing was it's almost like they're training people on the technical stuff, but not in the aesthetic thing. And I think the most important part of film scoring is the composition, and each person has a different approach and how they're true to themselves. So I spent all those years kind of without honing my skills as a composer, which was really what I needed. I just felt like I needed more time to experience music and to study music in general. But sure enough, I did when I was, in 98, I guess it was, I got a chance to score my first little short film. And it was a Brazilian film called A Short Story. And it was nominated for an Academy Award in the short film category. It was a very exciting thing. And it premiered in a festival in Brazil, which, I got an award for the music. Very unusual for short films, but, they did have one for that. And then it was like one thing led to the next, and it was actually quite fairly quickly after that, that led me to my first feature, which was Sterling, his American film, and, and On to the Door and the Floor, and so on and so forth.
And so when you start a film and you begin to write the score, what aspect of it inspires you the most? Is it the characters, the setting, the plot? What really speaks to you as a storyteller?
I think it's all of the above, and very importantly, the approach of the music. You usually start these things when you talk to the director, and they have their ideas, and they will say, I was thinking of the score like this, or it's orchestral, it's electronic, it's not what you think. Whatever it is, the approach is also. But in addition to all of the things that you said, how is the music going to be used? And also what kind of film it is. I mean, I've done a lot of dramas. That's probably what I've done the most. But then I've done a fair amount of comedies, a few thrillers, and so the film itself will dictate a lot. I think, to paraphrase a director that I worked with, he said that you have to listen to the film, and the film will tell you what it needs, and it will spit out the music that it does not need. And I agree with that statement 100%, and I find myself more and more trying to really understand, because although, of course, there's different ways that you can get there, and it is a scoring, it is a subjective art form. I mean, music is very subjective to begin with, and then, of course, how you use music in a film is compounded, by the number of choices and that you have. But I think it's really listening to what the film is, what it needs. How can you make it better? How can you? Sometimes it could be not doing anything. I mean, that's always like the big test for me when you're spotting a score. Is like, even after you write it, there are times when you take out the music and say, you know what, it's better without it. And so even that, in that sense, we have to listen to what the film is saying. But I tend to not be a big one on character themes, and I think mostly I find myself more gravitating towards themes that are more what I call emotional themes. So basically you have a theme that deals more with, let's say, tension. The other one could be about nostalgia, or there could be, like in the words, there's a romantic falling in love theme, but they not so much, here is Bob's theme and that's Anne's theme. You know what I mean? It's more, in general, that's what I found in the movies that I worked with. That's what it worked the best. Right. It's basically you were trying to score the wide gamut of emotions that might be in a film, and you could be doing a comedy, and then you might have, still like some kind of if it's a romantic comedy, you might have a romantic theme, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a character. It means it's when the romance happens, maybe with multiple characters. That tends to be more where you go. But hey, the next movie could be completely different. So this is my experience tonight.
Right. So with The Words was just released. I really loved the score to that. It was very rich and very emotional. How did you approach that film, and what was your goal musically for that?
I think that the tricky thing with The Words was, of course, all the different timelines. Initially we thought that we would have score reflecting, so we would have one sort of main, music for each of the different time periods. But then we found that, and this is, I drew from some of my experience when I did Hollywoodland and The Good Shepherd, which were movies with multiple, multiple timelines as well. I mean, Hollywoodland, of course, had two characters going parallel, to each other, and Good Shepherd had many, many characters that jump back and forth 20, 30 years, and it's like the music, I think, rather than dividing it, the music works best as a bridge between the time periods, and so it kind of like, and that's, I think, what the approach ultimately was. We set out to do something a little bit different. We thought that the orchestral stuff was only going to be in Paris for the young man. But then, also for a practical reason, we realized once you put this big orchestral lush music in a portion of the film. Once you cut out of it, if you don't have it anymore, it's like, it's like taking the candy out of of a kid's hand. It's like, all right, the rest just doesn't feel like it's holding up. So in the end, I think it started because we knew it was a period thing for the Young Man in Paris part. We wanted that sound, that classic, sort of film sound. But in the end, that ended up permeating the rest of the film. And so the themes, we have, for instance, the theme of when Bradley Cooper's character gets married to Zoe Saldana. It's this little waltz that we do just as a piano and string quartet thing. But then we're back in Paris for the young man when he gets married. And when he meets the woman and all that, that theme is done in a much bigger way. But still, that theme works in both time periods.
Mm-hmm. And now you're coming up in a few months. You have The Bay. You're reteaming with director Barry Levinson again. And I feel like this is kind of a departure for both you and Barry doing this, very gritty found footage horror film. Which has gained immense popularity. But usually these films, they don't usually have scores. How did music fit into The Bay here?
Well, it's true, and that was the first thing that I thought when he said he was doing it. But the thing with Barry is that, I've been through this with him now 3 times. Mm-hmm. And we did What Just Happened, You Don't Know Jack, and this. And those 3 movies are so different. And the music in those 3 movies is so different, and the way that the music is used is so different. Mm-hmm. And this comes from Barry. Barry is somebody that, listen, he doesn't have anything else to prove to anybody, Barry. He's just, he's this master filmmaker that has tackled every style, and I think it was a challenge for him. He was like, okay, what could I do with this, constraints of found footage, and I think what what he found is like he ended up doing it. So it comes from many, many different sources. So it's right. They wanted to liberate and say, have you seen it? I don't know if you've seen any screens of it or anything, or you just kind of saw reviews or read about it.
I've read a couple of reviews because I know it premiered at Toronto. I don't think it comes out until November. I'll probably see it closer to that date.
Yeah. So it's. So basically what it does is that it uses footage from everywhere. So it's like this event happens, and so there's footage from, there's Skype, there's cell phones, there's surveillance cameras, there's some home video footage. There's a reporter that is there that is also has a camera. So he kind of took, that was the exercise. It's like, okay, everything needs to be coming from a believable source. Of course, it works in our advantage, and you get to tell this whole story. But then the score is full on. It's basically, okay, a filmmaker found all this footage and did it and edited it together, and the score works in a dramatic way, and it's unapologetic. There's a lot of music, and it's really in your face. So basically, it's a departure for that kind of movie, and we'll see how people react. It's kind of it's an interesting approach, but it's Barry. As when I knew we were going to do it, Barry's a great storyteller, and he was not going to be. He's just going to tell a story. You know what I mean? It's just and the way he sees it's like, okay, if music is going to help me, we're going to do it. And he was a bit for me too. It's an entirely electronic score. It's very, it's really, really dark and, very subject matter is gruesome. And the score, I don't know if you can call it gruesome because it's music, but it's, it's very different from anything I've done. But I feel like that's par for the course with Barry. With him, every time, I think at this point, he wants to reinvent himself as a filmmaker with everything that he does. And I think he fully expects his composer to do the same.
Mm-hmm. I'm really looking because the way he uses music in all of his films, and now that you have...
It's very...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. He's the most open person. The thing I learned with Barry very early on was you can show him anything. One, you can have the wildest idea and he will sit down and listen to it. And if it works, he will use it. He doesn't have... actually the person that says you have to listen to the movie and we'll spit it out, it's Barry, you know. So, and yeah, he's very open and he's very, I mean, the way he uses swords, I mean, you know, of course, Good Morning Vietnam, watching this, you know, it's incredible the use of swords. And then, but even in the movies that we work together, I mean, he used his great Bach stuff on like this Bach a cappella with his jazzy thing that uses on You Don't Know Jack. That is fantastic. It's the weirdest thing, but it's just like he just, you know, he loves to just find something offbeat, and you know, he has no agenda when it comes to music. He just wants it to be great and to be fresh.
Right, and that comes through your music too, and I love seeing your collaboration grow over these 3 films, and I hope it continues. I can't wait for more.
Yeah, well, so do I. I mean, I that's one of the things that I'm proudest of is, you know, the work that I did with Barry. You know, when I did What Just Happened, I was like, oh my God, man, I can't believe I'm working with Barry Levinson. He literally, you know, the guy directed Bugsy. It's like my all-time favorite score, you know, and he did so many, the natural, everything, you know, and I always felt like I would be lucky to just do a movie with him, and I've done 3, so I feel it's ecstatic, you know.
Well, I guess to wrap up, I always like to ask composers, if you had the chance to score any movie ever made with no disrespect to the original composer, which film would you choose?
Days of Heaven.
Ooh, wow, amazing.
Days of Heaven. It happens to be my favorite movie, so that's probably why. Although I had no idea what I would do because it is incredible, but I just find that movie is like, the movie itself for me, it's like listening to a Beethoven symphony or something like that. It's so perfect and it's so amazing that it just
yeah, it's beyond words.
Absolutely beyond words. And also I should say, I don't know if in terms of things that are coming up, I do have a movie coming up called Won't Back Down. There's some film in Fox. It's a very interesting film about teachers taking on the teachers' unions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same way we're talking about the Bay as far as upcoming films, there's this film, Won't Back Down, that is with Maggie Gyllenhaal and Viola Davis.
Mm-hmm.
The director is Daniel Barnes, which we did briefly together.
Okay.
And this is a very different thing, and it's about two mothers taking on the school system to try to do sort of what they call a parent takeover on their school because the school is failing. It's very timely because of not only the elections, but also, you know, the fact that there's a strike going on in Chicago right now with the teachers union, as you know, I'm sure you know, and
right, yeah.
But and it's sort of like a Norma Ray sort of small person against the system kind of film, and it was a very interesting experience to score, and it's sort of like this Americana, a little bit electronic Americana thing, and with very fast moving score and all of that. It's just really great experience. It's going to come out on Lake Shore as well in a couple weeks.
Well, I cannot wait to take a listen and to be able to review it.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Marcelo. It's been a real, like, Door on the Floor is probably one of my favorite scores of all time. It's beautiful. And
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And Hollywoodland too. It's just the way you end Hollywoodland. It's very haunting. The New Simo is one of my favorite tracks.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
But thank you so much again, and best of luck, and hopefully we get to do this again sometime.
Anytime.